In faith we look to thee. Whether the phantoms flash the truth you see, both I find earth around the world, your words are fair and true. When questions and debates arise, we always look to you. All time and space and liberty, rambling canopies all belong to thee. Rambling canopies all belong to thee.
Good evening, all, and welcome to tonight's evening ramble. Thank you all for showing up. I hope you all are having a good evening. Up on the panel this evening, I have Captain Trek and Mr.CCDV. In the chat, we have, going all the way back to the beginning, number one sci-fi was first. Welcome, sir. Jeff Franklin, Kathleen Starr, and who else do we have? The usual suspects. We have my co-host for tomorrow night, Sci-Fi Nation. Welcome. Also, that was a good mic test earlier on today. I heard it. Wasn't there live. Tiki Doom, welcome. Today we are going to do a little bit of a interesting little round table here. We brought up Mr. CCDV this evening. His link for his channel is in the description, as well as Captain Trek's channel and GoFundMe are both in the description. Please, definitely, if you're not subscribed to either gentleman, please do so. Especially for Mr. CCDV this evening, which is kind of the whole reason for this chat, is tomorrow on Memorial Day, which I believe is a holiday in the South or something. I don't know. Anyway.
It's American holiday. American.
Yeah, that's what I'm told. So, he will be having his first ever live stream tomorrow night. So please, folks, if you're not subscribed to him, please subscribe to him tomorrow night, 7 o'clock Central, 8 Eastern. He'll be doing his first ever live stream, and I hope to see everybody there. I know I will be there before we do the Monday Night Madness with Sci-Fi Nation. So I hope everybody jumps in and says hi over there. Welcome, DJ Odyssey, Bird of Prey 5. Welcome, LDG Pixels. Welcome. So, Captain Trek, how are we doing this evening?
Doing all right. How are you?
Doing well. And Mr. CCDV, how are we doing?
I have managed to wake up. I'm drinking a little bit of whiskey and just having a good time.
Awesome. Okay, so I kind of wanted to use this opportunity to kind of get a couple of military stories, because you did serve in the United States military, so just fitting for Memorial Weekend, and just kind of start us off with why you joined, what got you into it, what branch you went into, why you chose to go that way, that kind of thing.
Okay, story number one. Here we go. So in 1995, I graduated from high school, and that same fall, August, I started going back to the high school I graduated from in Flagstaff. Found out that I was that guy, and I don't look as good as Matthew McConaughey, so even though the girls stayed the same age, I couldn't get them anymore. So I went down to the recruiter's office, and I asked the Air Force first because I didn't want to do combat stuff. I was a little wussy. in 95.
Yeah, that whole thing about getting shot at, not my
Yeah,
game.
not a big fan of that. So I
Not a big
asked the
fan of
Air
getting
Force
shot at.
first, and they said that you had to have 2 years of college to be in their band. I was a bass player and a tuba player, etc., that kind of thing. So I wanted to be in the band, and the Air Force said no. So I went over to the Army office, and they said yes. And when I got down to Phoenix to do the physical and sign up for my new job and everything, they said, you can't be in the band because you didn't audition before you came down here. And I went, oh, that sucks. That's the worst thing I've ever heard of.
Yes.
So I didn't audition for the band, therefore I can't be in the band. So I chose to be a fuel handler.
Okay, and what does that entail? Basic terms.
At the time, the Army switched over to a one fuel system, or they were supposed to have switched over to a one fuel system. So I dealt mostly with jet fuel, JP8, Jet Propulsion 8.
Okay.
And that has the antifreeze and antifungal stuff already in it. Turns out I'm allergic to those things.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
Wow,
Jet
you're
A.
really right.
Jet A would have been just fine, but JP8, oh, burns my skin every time. But no, I didn't have a problem with being a fueler. And I was a professional fueler. I graduated second in my class from advanced individual training. My very first job was with the 3rd Infantry Division, 315 Infantry at Fort Stewart, Georgia. That's the same infantry division that Audie Murphy was in. I don't know if anybody out there knows who Audie Murphy was.
Not off the top of my head, but I'm Canadian. I don't have to know, right?
Yeah, fair enough. he was the most decorated soldier in World War II for the Army. So if you think of Chesty Puller for the Marine Corps, Audie Murphy is the same thing for the Army.
Gotcha.
And that's the regiment that I was in when I got to my very first duty station. So yeah, that's why I joined the Army, is because I kept going back to my high school and trying to pick up girls. And I thought that was probably a bad idea for an 18-year-old to be picking up on 16-year-olds.
Yeah, probably not a good idea. So you decided to straighten up and ship out, as it were.
Yep. Kiss and ship is what I did.
So just quick little stream through the chat here. Welcome, Lori Roberts, Lady Mist, Mark World Entertainment. Welcome, Trey. Welcome, DJ Odyssey. In case I missed you the first time, I know I saw you up there. Purple Lady, welcome. Welcome to the chat. This evening, we're just going to have a nice little open conversation with Mr.CCDV, who served in the United States military. And we're kind of doing this as an early pimping his stream tomorrow night, which will be 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 Central on his channel, which is in the description. I also threw the link out in the chat, which I see Captain Trek has done again. Thank you, sir. And it'll be on his channel tomorrow. It'll be his first ever live stream. So we're just kind of drumming up interest here. He's going to share a few stories with us this evening and just kind of have some fun, have a few laughs. And then hopefully I see you all tomorrow on his stream. So anyway, so you get the job. You're doing the fueler. What's your career look like from there?
From there, I spent a year in Georgia, chasing after Bradleys. Those are the infantry fighting vehicles. So I learned how to fire expert on rifle and pistol. I qualified as a expert infantryman, but as a quartermaster, I was not allowed to wear the badge. So I have done all the infantry things at that point, and then I applied for schooling at West Point, and I was accepted to the West Point Preparatory School. At the time, it was in New Jersey.
Okay.
It's now moved up into New York, right next to West Point. But at the time, I was in New Jersey, and I spent about 6 months at the Preparatory Academy and realized that I didn't want to be an officer. I really enjoyed being an enlisted feller. So I went back to
Taking orders with more of your style, not giving them.
Yeah, pretty much.
Gotcha.
I was not prepared to be an officer, and so I went back to being an enlisted guy.
For. Tell me what to do, not the other way around.
Yeah, exactly. I went off to Fort Hood after that, Fort Hood, Texas. For 3 years, I was there.
Okay.
With the 1/8 Cav. That's Abrams unit, armor unit. So I chased the great big tanks in my fuel truck for about a year, and then we all shipped off to Bosnia.
Oh wow, that must have been interesting.
Oh, Bosnia was fun.
I sense a story incoming.
Well, we got there in September, and at that point, it was the hard-sided tents that we were in with the Franklin stoves that burned jet fuel. They were supposed to be diesel stoves, but we burned jet fuel in them.
Oh, that must have been interesting.
Well, since we were all fuelers, we managed to keep them running.
And none of them blew up. Well, yeah, I mean a couple, but none significant.
But about 3 months into that, they actually had built what they called sea huts, but it was just wooden buildings all in a row, and there were about 30 of us in each of the buildings on cots with a little cubby for our stuff. So it was crowded, but it was comfortable, all things considered.
Yeah. A little crowded, but it could be worse.
And I have told this story on I think it was volume 2 of my memoir.
Oh yes.
On my YouTube channel. So I think it is volume 2. I'm not absolutely sure about that. But we would do 24 hours on the fuel station where we were filling up the Humvees so that the Alpha through Delta companies could go out and do patrols in Bosnia. So we do 24 on and 48 off. So we were in there watching Pure Country. That's a movie by George Strait.
Okay.
The movie of George Strait, anyway.
So DJ Odyssey says that you still need to change your name to Drunken Philosopher. Is there a story there that I'm not aware of?
I'm not sure that there's a story behind it so much. I ain't that great a thinker,
Actually, I was the one that started that one.
Oh, okay.
That I can take the blame for.
Okay, so that's a hashtag blame track. Got it.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Carry on, sir. Carry on.
So we were watching the movie, and we had a little kerosene stove in there to keep the little hut warm. And we all had our feet up on the rail surrounding the kerosene heater. So when we finished watching the movie, we all got up to go outside and have a cigarette, and we left footprints on the floor of the hut. because our rubber soles of our boots had melted. We didn't realize it. So when we stood up and we started walking away, we had footprints all over the inside of the hut.
Your COs must have loved that.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, we all had to go buy new boots, but nobody actually cared about the footprints.
Oh, there you go. I just need new boots. Why? Don't ask. Just new boots.
just gonna go buy them. All right, shut up.
Shut up. We're going to get new boots. Why? Oh no. Don't worry about it. It's not a thing. Don't worry about it. It's all good.
So I say Bosnia was fun, but I mean, when we went out on patrol, and we were welcome to go out on patrol with the other companies whenever we wanted to. They would invite us to go out. Those poor people. Never, ever go into a war zone. It is an unpleasant sight, even 3 years after the fighting stops, because there's so much rebuilding that still has to be done. And there were people that were living in houses without roofs, just with tarpaulins that were tied up over the ceiling so that they wouldn't get rained on.
Wow.
Or snowed on. And so, yeah, it was unpleasant, but
definitely made you appreciate back home.
Yeah. So it's I say Bosnia was my favorite deployment, only because the fighting was over.
Yeah. But then you get to see the aftermath, which sometimes can be just as devastating as the actual things blowing up.
Yeah. So okay, back to the fun stories.
If I may ask,
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
How was because I'm sure most people have no idea the differences between fueling a jet and fueling their car. Are there huge differences other than the coupling that you use to attach to the planes?
Yeah, the coupling that you're thinking of is called a single point adapter.
Yes.
And you do have to use a single point adapter for jets.
Right.
And helicopters, etc. The biggest difference is that you have to have absolutely clean and dry fuel. I know that makes no sense to most people out there.
Okay, explain that a little bit. Dry fuel.
Dry fuel. So petroleum products are literally that, petroleum.
Okay.
So if you end up with water in it, that water can freeze. And you're talking about vehicles that go up to 20, 30,000 feet.
Yes.
And the temperature up at 20, 30,000, 40,000 feet is absolutely freezing.
Yes.
And so if you have water in the fuel, it will freeze in the fuel line and you will lose an engine.
And that's a bad day.
That is an extremely bad day for the pilots.
I was trying to be nice.
So when we say clean and dry, we're talking about the microbes that can grow on the surface of fuel. I know a lot of people think that nothing can grow on fuel, but trust me, microbes can grow on anything.
Yes. So do you have like a sterilization procedure, or is it just?
Well, we have filters that are micron filters. So the petroleum will go through, but the water will not. The microbes will not, and they slough off and they fall down into the sump of the filter.
Okay.
And so we run that fuel truck on recycling for about 3 hours, and then we test the fuel.
Okay. Very cool.
And we have water and what is that test called? Oh boy, it's been 10 years since I ran fuel. All right, so just relax.
That's okay. There's no quiz.
No
except for the
quiz.
exam at the end.
Yeah.
I used to have a math teacher that used to be a dick like that. There's no quiz, just an exam at the end.
Yeah, so we would make sure that the fuel was clean and dry, and then we'd make sure that the helicopters didn't fall out of the sky.
That would be a good idea. Yeah, definitely. Job done. Yeah, that's definitely that. What's the difference? Is there any major protocol difference between filling up like your jets to your Abrams?
Well, the M1 Abrams has a turbine engine, and so the only real concern with that, the fact that it's a turbine engine, is the same thing you would get in your jet airplanes. However, the Abrams doesn't leave the ground, and if it does leave the ground, you're in a whole lot of trouble.
Yes. Somebody did something wrong.
So if the engine stalls, it's really not that big a deal.
Yes. Well, unless they're in the middle of a battlefield and they're trying to make a hard left to avoid a shell. But,
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Minor detail.
I did play those games, actually. Louisiana. What is that fort called? Fort Polk, Louisiana. Was the first time I went to a full war simulation.
Okay.
And I got shot in the back by someone who is in signals. They're the ones who run the radios and things. I was furious. I had to go to the fake jail they had, where we waited 24 hours to become replacements for frontline troops.
Oh, joy.
I was furious.
In the back, dude. In the back.
I was shot in the back by a signals woman, and she laughed. She laughed.
Alrighty. So after Bosnia, what you come back to the States, and then
actually I came back to the States with the 1st Cav Division band.
Okay.
I used up my re-enlistment option to join the band, and we did parades and change of command ceremonies. We marched at Mardi Gras in 99.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was 99. We marched at Mardi Gras. I had so much fun in the band. But I left the military after that. In 2000, my enlistment was up.
Okay.
And so I left the military. Well, you know what happened in 2001.
Yes.
So, yes, my retarded ass signed up.
Well, I guess we're going back to work.
Yep. Well, I worked at LAX during that period.
Okay.
And when I signed back up, my boss at LAX was a former military officer. And so he gave me severance package and everything else. I left the airport with more money than I had been making at the airport.
Well, that was good.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. So at that point, I went to Fort Carson, Colorado.
Okay.
And I was in 59th Quartermaster Company in Fort Carson. And I did 2 of my deployments with them 2003 and 2005. 2003. That is the most memorable year of my life.
Okay. What sticks out to you?
Well, in March, the end of March, it was the 26th, I think, of March when we breached the berm into Iraq. That day, we were all lined up and ready to cross the border into Iraq. And I told my section leader, I'm afraid. I'm afraid. I'm driving a fuel truck into Iraq.
Yeah.
You know,
No pressure.
That's 5,000 gallons of fuel that I am driving into a war zone.
Yeah, and not just any fuel, highly explosive fuel.
But I mean, it went well. I mean, all things considered.
Yes.
That first 4 days, we never stopped moving. We were driving at about 20 miles an hour. So 12K an hour, I guess, is for you non-Americans. For about 4 days straight, and we were all exhausted. But we got to our first objective, and we started setting up a 1 million gallon fuel system on the ground right there after 4 days of driving straight. Hardly any of us had any sleep at all.
Yeah, I would imagine.
And when we finally finished, okay, here's another story. Have you ever seen the sky turn black?
Not really.
Some people in Arizona have seen it. When the sandstorms come through, the sky turns brown or very, very dark. In Iraq that day, though, it had to have been March 30th, I think. The sky turned black. There was so much sand in the air.
Wow.
And it started to rain. I mean, it didn't rain a lot, but it did start to rain, and a bunch of people pulled off their chemical suits and their chemical masks, and they started dancing around in the rain. I didn't. I stayed under shelter because I'm not dumb. But when it finally,
here's your sign moment.
Yeah, when it went from black to gray and we could see each other again, everybody was covered in mud. Everybody had taken off their chemical suits and were dancing around. Were covered in mud.
Yep. Yeah, you are a dumb ass. Where's the shower? We haven't built it yet.
we haven't built the shower yet. You got to use them baby wipes you brought with you. Oh, you didn't bring baby wipes? Well, I guess you're going to be all muddy.
Hey, tomorrow's going to suck for you.
But that night after we built the system, and it was only a 12-pack system. We only had 12 50,000-gallon bags. But that night, my squad was tasked with waiting for the first convoy of fuel trucks to come in. And so we laid down on one of the berms that we had built. And, I mean, the storm was still blowing through.
Yeah.
But we all still had our chemical suits on, and they're called NBC suits, nuclear biological chemical suits.
Okay.
And they're charcoal suits, so our uniforms were ruined after we finally got to take them off. But that night, we laid down on the berm waiting for the first convoy of fuel trucks to come in. They never showed up. And when the light came up about 6 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, something like that, we were all completely buried. It was like watching something from the the Scorpion King, you know. We were all completely buried in sand at the time. So we all sat up and all the sand cascaded off of us.
Oh, somebody got that on camera, right? Please say somebody got that on camera.
Oh, I wish. No,
Yeah,
that would have
that's what
been
I mean.
fantastic, though.
Yeah, it's like, hey, you want to see something cool? Yeah.
So yeah, that was 2003 in a nutshell.
In a nutshell, yeah.
In a nutshell.
So-
I'll tell a different story tomorrow
All right.
night.
Awesome.
About blowing up a fuel bag.
That should be interesting.
Ever seen a fuel bag explode?
No, I can't say that I have.
Now, you did tell one story in your memoirs of a Pogue that I always found funny, and that was when when you were covered in fuel. How did that happen?
Oh, come on now. I do like that story, though.
I do too. That's why I'm bringing it up.
I don't do a very good Puerto Rican accent, though. My instructor in Advanced Individual Training, AIT, he was showing us the HEMT, the fuel HEMT. And that's a 2,500-gallon tank on the back of an 8-wheeled vehicle. And it has a 350-gallon pump housing on the back of it. Well, when you park a fuel truck, you are supposed to purge the fuel truck. Purging the fuel truck means you run three or four times the amount of water through the truck in order to clear out all the pipes and the tank and everything else like that.
Okay.
In this case, and I don't know why. I'll probably never know why. It may have been an active fuel truck for all I know. But in any case, they had that parked out in the yard where we were learning all about the HEMT.
Okay.
And my instructor was showing us the single point adapter, or the D1 adapter is what we called it in the Army, but it's a single point adapter. It's the same thing in civilian airports as it is in the military, but we have a different acronym for it because we're, the military.
We got to be complicated. Yeah. Our shit's got to sound important. All right.
Yeah, it's a D1 adapter, I tell you. In any case, he was showing us the adapter port on the back of the HEMT. And we were all standing in a semicircle around the back of the HEMT. And the guy said, "Never, ever push this in." And he proceeded to push it in. And I happened to be the one guy who was standing right in the path of the fuel that came out of the back of the truck. And it splashed all over my uniform down to my boots. That was the very first time I got covered in fuel. There's no accounting for intelligence in the military. You never know what you're gonna get.
And that was the time where your smoke break was denied. From smoke
you
break
really
to Roman
don't
candle.
want to smoke when you're covered in fuel.
No. How to go from smoke break to Roman candle in 5.7 seconds.
Oh, I could do it. I could do it
safely.
Not the first time I was ever, well, it was the first time I was ever covered in fuel, but it was not the last time I was ever covered in fuel.
Yes, I love that line when you said it in your memoir. It was the first time, but it wasn't the last time.
It wasn't the last.
Oh. So any other stories from your deployments or just on the bases that you remember or
I got
that you'd
tons
love
of
to
them.
that you don't mind sharing with us tonight, not to ruin your show too much tomorrow, but
Well, let me think. Oh, where was I? Oh, yeah, that was Fort Hood as well. Okay. So there was this strip club I used to go to all the time and spent all my money at.
oh, this story's a good one. It starts out with there was a strip club I used to go to. I'm sorry, buddy. Go ahead. Carry on. I'll shut up.
Well, a few hours earlier in the day, I had gone to a music store and picked up a new guitar cable for my bass. Oh, yeah, it must have been 99 then. Okay. Yeah, it had to have been 99. Well, in any case, I went and bought a new guitar cable, and on my way home, or on my way back to the barracks, I stopped at the strip club because, well, that's where I lived.
My home away from home.
My home away from home, away from home, yes.
yes.
They were having 25-cent well drinks, so I was drinking vodka tonic for about 4 hours. And I left the strip club at about 2 o'clock in the morning. Went back to the barracks, was looking for my guitar cable, and I didn't find it. And I realized that it must have fallen out of my truck at the strip club. So I drove back to the strip club, and I found the guitar cable, and I put it in my truck, and I got back in my truck, and then I woke up.
Oh, wow. Oh, boy. Yeah, that'll do it.
I was not the safest 20-year-old.
Probably not. Yeah, probably not. That statute of limitations on those D&D charges are up, right?
I was not the safest in my 20s.
Were any of us? To be old and wise, you must first be young and dumb.
Exactly. There you go. I'm much better at drinking and driving now.
What I meant to say there was.
I will say, though, as a matter of fact, since you asked, and we did talk about this backstage prior. In 2003 and 2005, all of the soldiers who went there did their own job. So a fueler was a fueler, a cook was a cook, a laundry specialist was a laundry specialist, etc.
Yes.
In 2005, we started selling off all of the support services to contractors, mostly Kellogg, Brown, and Root. And we called them KBR. So I deployed in 2011 as a contracting officer, and so I would hire the contractors.
Okay.
I was still active duty, and a contracting officer is one of the jobs in the Army. Well, all the military. Well, in any case, so in 2011, we were pulling out of Iraq.
Yes.
And so we were canceling as many contracts as we could, as fast as we could. Well, the problem with that is that the support services, the 92 Foxtrots, the 92 Whiskeys, and the cooks and everything else, they hadn't been doing their job, their own job, for about 6 or 7 years. And so on the base that I was at in northern Iraq, we were without power for 3 days because the fuelers couldn't figure out how to run a fuel truck.
Oh, no. Ain't that your department? Yeah, but I haven't done it in a couple of years. A little rusty.
The dining facility was full of smoke because the cooks kept burning everything that they cooked.
Oh boy.
We
That's a
didn't
bad
have
day at the
fresh
office.
water. We had to drink whatever was left over from the bottled water. Yeah, it was crazy. 2011 was crazy. I just
Wasn't that your job? Yeah, but I haven't done it in a couple years. I'm a little rusty. Oh joy. Oh, that's just too funny. And then, of course, you probably knew what they were doing wrong, but weren't allowed to tell them what they were doing wrong.
No, I was not allowed to tell them what they were doing wrong. Hey, as a senior non-commissioned officer, I should be allowed to tell anybody what to do.
Actually, as me, I should be able to tell anybody what to do.
This is how you work a fuel helmet, stupid.
Listen here, dum dum. We're gonna get this fixed up in 5 minutes flat. Number one, dumbass, quit trying to drink it. Get over here.
Here's a lever. Pull the lever. Make the fuel come out. Stop dicking around and get us some power.
I would have had this shit done back in my day. One of those kind of moments. And Jeff Franklin, I hope you're safe. I hope that storm isn't too bad. I noticed it in the chat. Be safe, my friend. And I hope it doesn't give you too much damage over there. And just be safe, my friend.
Yeah,
And
2-inch hail. Holy cow. That's a lot of insurance claims.
yes, that's an autopack nightmare up here. So anything else you want to kind of touch on, or I'm pretty sure. I don't know. I have friends in the Canadian military, and I understand that being in the military, also drinking goes hand to hand with that. Is that the same thing down there?
Well, yes, generally. However, I was married.
Yes.
So I was a teetotaler for about 15 years.
Okay.
And that was, well, I'm pleasantly divorced now. And
So you did the old return to sender, did you?
yes, absolutely, I did.
Return to sender, address unknown. Captain Trek, you got any questions for him before we wrap things up?
No, I was just going to see if there was anything that he might want to share that without spoiling anything for tomorrow, because I really want to listen in tomorrow, and want to encourage everyone who's here to listen tomorrow. Absolutely.
And Sci-Fi Nation, get in touch with me if you're still in chat. Get in touch with me tonight. I think we're gonna move ours a little bit later. Instead of going at our normal 9 Central, we'll go at probably like 9:30, just because I'm going to be over at his stream for the duration. So we'll kind of play it by ear tomorrow night. But anyway, I do want to say that again, his first ever live stream will be tomorrow night. So let's show up in mass. Let's make it a huge success, and let's all be there for him. And I want to thank him for coming on.
Thank you.
And
we did talk about the beginning of my career, so I will go ahead and end this with the end of my career.
Awesome.
If you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, the floor is yours, sir.
I was at Fort Irwin was my final duty station. Fort Irwin, California is the national training center for American forces to go and learn desert warfare training. And I was contracting specialist then, not an officer, a specialist. I didn't have a warrant to obligate government funds, so I was a specialist instead of an officer. It's not a big deal. It's a definition that only contracting specialists know. But I started in 2005 I had a MRSA infection, and I think that triggered my multiple sclerosis. So I started going downhill after when I got home in 2006. I started going downhill. By 2012, it was to the point where I couldn't even walk 2.5 miles anymore. And what I went in to the doctor for was because my ankle had collapsed.
Okay.
And they took that and made that the end of my career. They gave me 10% disability from the Army for my ankle, even though multiple sclerosis was the cause of my inability to walk.
Mm-hmm.
But they took the ankle and gave me 10%. The VA has given me 100% since then. So I basically live off of disability now. But at the time it was I don't know. It was a combination of a bad chain of command and a disease that I had no control over, and then also the policy of the administration at the time was to reduce the force structure by 150,000 troops.
Okay.
And so even though I had never had any kind of bad mark in my career, and I had been deployed 4 times and came back, well, some would call me a hero, but I just happened to have been there 4 times. That's all, you know?
Yeah, I get it.
And I managed to come home safe and sound most of the time. So, but it was just a really bad time in 2014 is when that happened to me. And so that was the end of my career. My ankle put me out of the military. My multiple sclerosis put me on disability, and here I am. Like I said, I don't have any qualms. I'm an open book. You can ask me anything, you know.
But well, I think what we'll do is we'll save a lot for tomorrow. And I want to thank you for coming on. I want to thank you for your service. It was and I, you kept us.
We'll blow up a 50,000 gallon bag tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. I look forward to that story. I might even have to have a drink beside me for when you tell me, so I can really enjoy that one. And but I want to thank you for coming on. I want to thank you for your honesty. I want to thank you for being willing to discuss these things, and I want to thank you for, of course, every Saturday coming on and singing. You're a highlight to my show, and I want to thank you for that. So, guys, like I said, his link's in the description. Thank you, Captain Trek, for putting it in the chat. Please make sure you're subscribed to Mr.CCDV, and I hope to see everybody tomorrow. Again, it'll be at 7:00 Central, 8 Eastern, and
5 Pacific.
5 Pacific. And let's kick his live stream off with a bang, and not as big of a bang as as a fuel tank going off, but a bang.
That was a fun time, all right.
Get the marshmallows. Anyway, but on that note, I just want to thank everyone for coming. Thank Mr. CCDV for coming on. Thanks, Captain Trek, for being my wingman as always. And till next time, take her easy, folks.
All right. Thanks again for having me.